In this lesson, we're going to add light to our levels. Godot has a system to do 2D lighting. You can use a light 2D node to do so. So I invite you to open the first level of the game with which we are going to work, select the root node, and add a light 2D node. Now this node is just a point in space to which we have to assign a texture. That texture has to be a transparent texture filled with white. So you have the light.png texture in the assets folder to do so. Click and drag it on the texture slot to see the lighting effect appear. So it might only appear if you hover the tile map with the texture, but you should be able to see that slight effect. So let's configure it a bit so that it works a bit better than it does now, that it affects the background as well. First, you can play with the texture scale parameter to make the light bigger by increasing the value. So 2 will double its size, or make it smaller by reducing the value here. I'm going to make it really big so that we can play with it. And you can increase the energy to increase the power of the light. Let's expand the range category so that we can set the minimum and maximum layers affected by this light. So you remember that our background is on the layer -100. Right now, our light is set to only affect layer 0. So we're going to change the range to -100 to, let's say, 1, 2, whatever. We can then play with our rendering layers to affect the characters and different parts of the game separately. Which brings us to the lights mode, because lights are very interesting in Godot. You can use them to add the colors of the light to the scene. So adding white multiplied by the white color here is just going to light up the scene. It's going to make the colors under it lighter. If you change the mode to subtract, it's going to be the opposite. It's going to make them gray and dark. It's going to mathematically subtract the colors together, the pixels. And then the very interesting one, I think, is mask. You can use the light as a mask. So imagine that you have a hidden area, or you want the player to play a bit like a detective. You can use the light 2D system to create some hide and seek game or masking effect. But we're going to reset the mode to add to start with. Now, lights can also cast shadows. To do so, you go to the shadow category and set shadows to enabled. You won't see a difference for now because we don't have anything that can cast shadows at the moment in our level. I'm going to add some coins at the beginning and maybe some platforms, and we're going to add light occluders to the coins and to the tile map. So let me duplicate the coin, place them inside the lit area, and we're going to first add the occluders to the coins. We want to go to the coins scene. So on any coin in the node tree, click on the open in editor icon to open it in the editor. So being on the coin, I'm first going to reset the position of the coin area because it was not centered. I'm also going to take the bouncing animation on the first frame. The icon seems to be centered. We're going to follow the contour of the coin sprite to make our light occluder. So you can hide the collision shape 2D, select the coin sprite, actually, press Ctrl A and create a light occluder 2D. So this is a collision shape that is only going to prevent light from passing through. To create a new polygon, you go to the occluder category in the inspector, new occluder polygon 2D, And then you can create points using the create points icon in the toolbar, just like with any collision polygon. Then you click in the view to create the points. Make sure that the occluder goes outside the coin, outside the sprite's area, because otherwise, as you will see a bit later, you can get really nasty artifacts with a little bit of the very bright pixels of our coin bleeding outside the light area. I'm going to make one of the points inside the coin a little bit like that so that you can see the issue I'm talking about. You have to create the area manually here, so make sure that you create enough points to have a fairly nice and round shape. And so with that, you can save the coin already, go back to the first level, and you will see the shadow area. Notice how we have that very bright artifact in the area I did not cover with the shadow. So going back to the coin, I'm going to ensure that this is covered well. Note that as soon as you created the full polygon and closed it, Godot automatically bounces to the edit point tool in the toolbar. So anytime you want to edit the points, you use that icon. If you want to delete any point, you consider that you have too many, you select the third icon and click a vertex. And so with the edit point tool, you can also hover a segment, and when you see a green point, a green dot in there, click and drag to create a new vertex and improve the roundness of your shape. So we are going to make the light occluder a bit larger than the coin itself and go back to the level. I have to save my coin for the shape to update. Okay, so now you might be thinking, well, the light is a bit blocky, the shadow rather, and yeah, it's not really convincing the way it is right now. From afar, it's okay, but at the full resolution in the game, I can see some artifacts. The lighting system has some parameters to help circumvent that. So select your Light 2D once again, and then you want to go to the shadow category. You have two parameters to smooth out your shadow. The first one is the gradient length. Gradient is an effect that starts from the place the light hits the shaded area first, and it's going to soften the transition to the shadow area. So let's increase this gradient length a little bit so you can see the effect. You don't want it to be too big, but you can use it to have the part of the coin that is close to the light to be lit and the part that's away from it to be completely in the shadow. So let's have a small gradient length. Then you have a filter category here, filter parameter. Filter will work on the edges of your shadows. It's going to make multiple copies of the shadow with a slight offset to give you some kind of anti-aliasing or smoothness. Let me show you. So let's set the smoothness to, let's say, 4. Nothing happens because we don't have any filter applied. You can click the drop down and select PCF 5, which is going to create 5 copies of the shadow. If you zoom really close on the shadow, you can see these copies, these steps I'm talking about. Meaning that the higher you want the smoothness to be, if you want it to be 10 pixels, for example, the higher you will need to set the filter and the more performances it will cost you. So let's set it back to 5 and have a smoothness of 4 or 5. So it's going to be subtle. It's just going to be a nice little effect on our coins. The coin is currently in the shadow, so in the next video we'll make it lit, the coin itself, and we'll add shadow shapes to the player and the enemy. See you there.